In World of Warships, the Citadel shot is the method of achieving the most damage from your ship's guns. Armor-piercing shells are the best method for achieving Citadel shots. In this video, we will be explaining advanced methods of obtaining these shots. Most people are familiar with the broadside shot. What many may not be familiar with is the Athwartship Citadel. The Citadel is essentially a box. Boxes have 6 sides. 5 sides of the Citadel are possible to shoot and hit. The small front and rear sides of our Citadel are termed Athwartship Citadels. Some people know about this part of the ship but consider them a less than ideal target because they believe that the bow armor is too often too difficult to overcome. Often, they're incorrect in this assumption. Let's talk about armor-piercing shots and bow armor. Armor-piercing shells have an overmatch value dependent upon the caliber of the gun. For instance, the North Carolina can overmatch 28mm of armor. This Des Moines has bow armor of 27mm. If armor-piercing shells from the North Carolina hit a bow that has less than 28mm of armor, then the angle of the ship will not matter. Those shells will either penetrate or over-penetrate. They will not ricochet. Armor-piercing shells that overmatch a ship's bow are often able to hit the Athwartship Citadel. This is why bow tanking against a battleship in a cruiser when in brawling range is often ineffective. When armor-piercing shells are shot at a ship and hit, the server first checks for an overmatch and then subsequently checks for an auto-bounce ricochet. If the shells do not overmatch the armor they hit, as will be the case for most cruiser-on-cruiser engagements, the server then checks for the angle that the shells hit. Most ships have an auto-bounce ricochet angle of 60 degrees, plus an additional margin of a few more degrees. For instance, the Moskva's armor-piercing auto-bounce ricochet values are 60 plus 7 degrees. This means that if the shells hit from an angle on the left side of the pink line, then the shells will ricochet 100% of the time unless they overmatch the armor. Between the pink and yellow lines, the shells have an RNG-based auto-bounce ricochet where they will ricochet some of the time and penetrate some of the time. If the shells hit from an angle to the right of the yellow line, the shells will not auto-bounce. However, this does not mean that shells shot from the right side of the yellow line will never ricochet. That performance still depends on the armor those shells are impacting. Now compare the Moskva's angles with the Des Moines. The Des Moines has angles of 67.5 plus 7.5 degrees. This allows for easier penetration of the bow armor and thus the Athwartship Citadel from a nearly bow-on position. The Minotaur has even more extreme angles of 75.5 plus 8 degrees. When your ship is within brawling range, or less than 7 kilometers from the ship you are engaging, then the Athwartship Citadel becomes a viable target. Where you aim to hit the Athwartship Citadel depends on the target ship that you are shooting at. All Tier 10 cruisers have an Athwartship Citadel below and in front of their first turret. This is not the case for other ships, so check the armor profiles of the ships you are interested in attempting to do this with first. Additionally, unless you are in another battleship, attempting to citadel a battleship in this way when in a cruiser is unlikely, though regular penetrations are possible. So when your target is a tier 10 cruiser, and you are brawling with it, and you cannot overmatch the bow armor, aim for the waterline below the first turret from the appropriate angles for your ship. When your guns are at a 45-degree angle, the Athwartship Citadel and the normal Citadel are both viable targets. This means that you should be aiming where the two parts of the Citadel converge, still around the first turret. Even when aiming at the regular Citadel, it is preferable to try to hit the front end of the Citadel of an approaching ship rather than the rear part of the Citadel. The reason for this has to do with geometry. If the front part of the ship is 45 degrees relative to your guns, then the rear part of the ship will be at a worse angle to your guns, and thus your shells must penetrate more armor. To return to this image of the Des Moines and its angles, whenever brawling between the pink and green lines, the Athwartship is a viable target. When around the green line, the Citadel in general becomes viable as well, and you should aim for the sweet spot where you can hit both parts below the front turrets. Now good luck to you, Captain, in your citadeling efforts.